Hi everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to the video where we recap the highest scoring games on the channel across all of our reviews, taking the highest score for each month.
Yep, so we've got obviously 12 reviews that we're going to mention. As Mark said, they are the highest score for each month on the channel. December is, there weren't as many reviews because we were doing our 12 days of SwitchUp series, but still some good games, and the top one for that month deserves to be on this list.
So what are the best games of the year? Well, let's find out. In January then, we had Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown.
Yes, it's almost, you almost forget this came out this year, don't you? But this was a very good way to start what was actually quite a slow month. January was quite slow, but this was a standout game in that month. It's a Metroidvania, of course, that carries on the Prince of Persia series. Very much relies on fluidity and movement and animation in terms of getting through stages and fighting the bosses. And just an all-round very good game, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. Very fluid combat, uses a parry mechanic, nice world to explore. That one got a SwitchUp score of 93%.
Moving into February then, and we had a joint highest games during this month. The first of those was Tomb Raider, the 1 to 3 remaster, and the other was Star Wars Dark Forces.
Yeah, two different teams there. I think Saber worked on the remaster for Aspyr, and then Star Wars was Night Dive Studios, but both doing the thing where you can switch between the old and the new styles. Lots of modifications and improvements to performance. They're great games, the Tomb Raider ones actually. They hold up really nicely, and they improved the controls by giving you modern controls rather than that clunky old feel, but it did take a couple of patches to get that quite right. As it stands though, very good games. They both scored 87%.
Then we moved into March, and I think this was the first real big hitter of the year. This was Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah, absolutely destroyed my expectations, like blew them apart. Brilliant game, lovely JRPG, has that lovely Muramasa art style, kind of a blend of genres as well with the strategy, as well as the real-time strategy elements and the management strategy. All comes together really well with a few choices as well about who joins your team. It got a very high score, might even be my highest ever score.
Quite possibly, yeah.
It got 95%.
Then we moved into April, and the highest scoring game here was Balatro. Now I think this actually came out in March, but it was one that kind of passed us by a little bit, and the review didn't go out until a little bit later. But wow, when we did review it, what a fantastic game. So it's a roguelite where you have to build a hand of cards to try and beat particular blinds and keep moving on through, and you get joker cards that allow you to buff your cards and therefore get these ludicrously high scores and beat the blinds and move on. It probably doesn't sound as good as it is, just because of, I don't know, it sounds a bit, I don't know, boring for want of a better word, but it flows so well, and it's such a great concept. It's executed almost to perfection, to be perfectly honest. Very pleasant surprise, and definitely stands up there with some of the best games of the year, as you'll see in terms of its score, because it got a SwitchUp score of 92%.
In May we had Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, which is essentially a remake as far as engine goes, brand new engine. I think it's on Unreal Engine actually, which is interesting. But the core gameplay remains pretty much unchanged. You've got an RPG that has this turn-based but also active combat. You've got a mechanic that allows you to fold yourself into different items like a paper aeroplane to traverse areas, and it has a solid storyline as well.
It really does. It's a great game. It was a great game when it released back on the GameCube, and it holds up fantastically well to this day. You'll notice there will be a few RPGs on this list. They clearly are kind of the games that really deliver, and this one was well up there. SwitchUp score of 91%.
In June then, the Sunshine Month, supposedly.
Not in this country.
Maybe not here. We had Shin Megami 5 Vengeance, which might annoy some people a little bit because obviously they have a tendency to kind of re-release their games with a few slight tweaks. But if it was the first time you come into the experience, it's the best version. It feels like the director's cut.
Yeah, this is we're reviewing, when you're reviewing a game, you appreciate the fact that there will be people that are unhappy about the model used by a company, because obviously this does tell a new story, but a lot of the game is the same, and you couldn't just buy that new story, you had to buy the whole thing again.
Yeah.
So as you say, if you're buying it for the first time, no bother, but if not, that will irk you. But when you take it as a standalone release and you forget the fact that it was released before, and you just look at how much content this game has, it's still a fantastic release. The gameplay is wonderful, that turn-based combat, but with the demon fusion mechanic that you find in Shin Megami Tensei. This is one of my favourite RPGs of all time, I have to say, and this Vengeance release just kind of consolidated that further. Another game that, funnily enough, got a SwitchUp score of 91%. Moving into July then, and we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. Moving away from RPGs for a minute, this is a roguelite, an action-based roguelite, very similar to Hades, if you've ever played that game, where you're moving through levels, taking on a whole host of enemies, defeating them to move on to the next screen, being given a number of different power-ups as you go, and almost like building your ideal character in terms of the damage you do, the type of damage, the output of it, etc., etc. I just found this game incredibly compelling. The fact that I'm a big Turtles fan doesn't hurt, but the fact it was a good Turtles game is what got it the score it got. You can't flatter me with throwing turtles in my face and fluttering your eyelids at me. It has to be a good game still, and I found this fantastic, to be fair. The combat was fluid, I found the levels engaging. I wish there was more of it, I must say, but even with that taken into account, it's still got a SwitchUp score of 91%.
In August then we had a couple of nice indies, one of them from the past with his latest game, and one of them that I'd never heard of. We had a joint score here, a joint top score with Valfaris and Conscript. I'll talk about Conscript. You were Mr. Valfaris, so that probably makes sense. Conscript was a survival horror set within a World War I trench, and it was brutal, really grim, dark environment. The horror came from obviously the fact that you're in the World War I trenches, and there was like Suicide Alley in there that you have to go through, and it's just gross, there's like gas coming in, you'd come across people that were dead all over the place or dying, whether they're on your side or not, and then half the time you haven't got any ammunition, you're using your trench like shovel thing as a weapon. Grim world, but has a grim, I don't want to say beauty, it has a, I don't even know what to say, so I'm not going to, but it manages to make it compelling.
As did Valfaris Hyperion, which obviously the two games shared this month. Now this is a sequel to a run and gun. This time round it's a shoot 'em up where you're in this mecha suit, hence the title. Very good game. I enjoyed its gameplay mechanics. I liked the art style. Quite putrid for want of a better word, but did work well in the context of the game. This was obviously a lower scoring month. I think this was Gamescom month, wasn't it? And it showed, not that these are bad games by any stretch, but their scores do pale when compared to the other games across the year. But both very good games, and as Mark said, they both got 85%.
In September, we had the release of the Marvel Capcom bundle that you were very much looking forward to.
Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, the arcade classics, and as the title implies, brings together a bunch of fantastic arcade fighting games, including obviously Marvel superheroes and a bunch of Capcom characters. Some of these games haven't ever seen a release outside of the arcade originals, or have seen limited releases over the years. So to have this collection available now is, fantastic for anyone that loves their fighting games. It's got some real well-loved games from the genre in here, I think, such as Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and it performs well, looks great. Yeah, just a really good bundle if you like your fighting games, and it got a fantastic 92%.
After that then, in October, we had the re-release with the total remake of Romancing Saga 2.
Yeah, so back to RPGs then after a few months off. I was looking forward to this one because it was a game I'd always wanted to get on with. It was a Super Famicom game originally that I'd never played because it didn't come out over here, but I had played a remaster of it that I'd found more difficult to get into than I was anticipating. So I was kind of like a level of trepidation when this came out.
Yeah.
As to whether I'd again struggle with it, but I didn't at all. It's absolutely brilliant. I loved this game. Although it didn't get my personal highest score of the year, I mean, it was very close, to be fair, it was only 1% in it. I'd say it's probably my favourite game of all the games that released this year. I love the combat system. I found it so interesting. I thought that the Saga series in general just does such good stuff when it comes to keeping its combat fresh, and this is no exception. And if this is a game that perhaps you haven't played because there have been so many other good releases, good RPGs this year, then you owe it to yourself to at least watch the review. Brilliant game, got 91%.
November then, probably our last month for full reviews.
Yeah.
We had 9 Souls, which I think was right at the tail end of the month. It might have been at the start. Time flies, doesn't it? The closer you get towards the 12 days of SwitchUp, really. This is a Hollow Knight inspired Metroidvania. Has a really interesting character. I just loved the world. It had a real sense of place and also identity, which isn't always the case. Sometimes you get these amazing mechanics within an environment that it seems like the developers didn't even care about. But here it feels like an actual place they thought carefully and structured around the concept of the story, which again I won't spoil. Go check out the full review. This got a very high score, well deserved, of 90%.
So into December then, I think there were only about 5 reviews in December, again because of our 12 days of SwitchUp series, but 2 of those games scored very well, being Core Keeper and Legacy of Kain.
Yeah, Core Keeper was a bit like Minecraft, mixed with Terraria, top-down perspective. We played it in co-op, joining together online. It was a shame it didn't have local co-op, but it did feel like that, sprinkled with a bit of Stardew Valley. And you kind of gradually explore these underground caves, and then you're gaining new materials to improve, which is very familiar if you've played any of the games I've mentioned. But you also come across boss fights in quite an organic way. You know, you might go through a tunnel and then like a giant creature will flow past and you can fight it then and there or run away screaming.
Yeah, and then you've got Legacy of Kain, which of course, well actually this was 1 and 2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This was a bundle of 2 older games that have been, was it a remaster?
Yeah, a complete remaster, like new engine. Well, it's a lie, it's not a new engine, it's the same engine, and thankfully, it was Crystal Dynamics, wasn't it? They gave all of the assets and stuff to not Aspire, this again is Saber, so to them to then create these versions, and also to bring back some areas that weren't in the original games, which is quite cool. And you can go kind of explore them. It feels like a bit of a museum in that regard. But yeah, brilliant, both excellent titles. They got SwitchUp scores of 87%.
So there you have it then, there's a year's worth of highest rated scores on SwitchUp. Did you buy any of these games? What did you make of them? Let us know in the comment section below.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you completed any of them? That's the question. How's that backlog looking? Thanks so much for watching over the year all our reviews. We really do enjoy making them, and I'm sure it's going to be quite a banger of a year coming up.
Don't forget, if you're looking for eShop credit to pick any of these games up, you can use our website switchup.gg, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cash back. There are other links down there to places such as Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your support across the whole year. Take care and happy gaming.